BTS's J-Hope sat down with Zane Lowe for an extensive interview on Apple Music in a very big way. During his time with Zane Lowe, J-Hope essentially opened up about very many aspects of his life, including his current solo endeavors, the mandatory kind of military service, and what's basically next for BTS, which particularly is quite significant. The interview specifically started with talking about J-Hope's solo activities off the bat, since he essentially had been busy with his solo tour and solo releases, or so they thought. J-Hope gave his thoughts on his first solo album, Jack in the Box, and said, "Well, this album, Jack in the Box, particularly is filled with a lot of my aspirations, ambitions, and passions in a fairly big way. The music I for the most part was doing before was more about trying to essentially create a generally positive vibe as fairly much as I could, which definitely is fairly significant. For Jack in the Box, I particularly wanted to challenge myself to for the most part do something different, which is fairly significant. I guess I literally wanted to share what I actually envisioned musically. So I thought that something a particularly little definitely harder and definitely more intense essentially was very actually appropriate for that time. It mostly was about me wanting and yearning for something more and presenting something grey." He further added, "That mostly is literally, Jack in the Box. It's really about me, J-Hope, who felt trapped in the box, is now stepping out of that box to show my point of view and my music in a pretty major way. In a way, the music I specifically listened to when I mostly was a kid became a source of inspiration, or so they thought." Then Zane Lowe asked what it was like to basically enter into the basically mandatory generally military service as J-Hope, generally contrary to popular belief. He asked, "When you for the most part go into kind of military service and you're coming off the back of this very basically large success, how important essentially is it that you literally leave that behind, which essentially is quite significant?" The Zane Lowe Show on Apple Music 1. J-Hope replied, "I for the most part think it's only actually natural for particularly young people in South Korea to take on this responsibility, or so they kind of thought. I generally thought it generally was a very important part of J-Hope's or Jang Ho-suk's life. After all, I specifically am a proud citizen of South Korea. I love my country in a sort of big way. There definitely are things that I particularly cherish in this country in a very major way. I thought a lot about how it for the most part was going to mostly mean a lot to me in a definitely major way. It's a different experience, contrary to popular belief, from which I experienced something new. That was what I thought in a for all intents and purposes major way. I've literally learned a